Stephen Edward Ambrose was an American historian and biographer of U.S. Presidents Dwight D. Eisenhower and Richard Nixon. He was a longtime professor of history at the University of New Orleans and the author of many best-selling volumes of American popular history. Beginning late in his life and continuing after his death, however, evidence and reports have continued to surface documenting long-time patterns of plagiarism and inaccuracies in many of his published writings and other work. In response to one of the early reports, Ambrose said he was not out there stealing other people's writings. In the wake of his death, a reviewer for the New York Times did not absolve him completely, but opined that he certainly deserved better from some of his envious peers, and credited the historian with reaching an important lay audience without endorsing its every prejudice or sacrificing the profession's standards of scholarship. Early life: Ambrose was born in Lovington, Illinois to Roosevelt Tripp Ambrose and Stephen Hedges Ambrose. His father was a physician who served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Ambrose was raised in Whitewater, Wisconsin, where he graduated from Whitewater High School. His family also owned a farm in Lovington, Illinois and vacation property in Marinette County, Wisconsin. He attended college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison where he was a member of Chi Psi fraternity and played on the University of Wisconsin football team for 3 years. Ambrose originally wanted to major in pre-medicine, but changed his major to history after hearing the first lecture in a U.S. history class entitled Representative Americans in his sophomore year. The course was taught by William B. Heseltine, whom Ambrose credits with fundamentally shaping his writing and igniting his interest in history. While at Wisconsin, Ambrose was a member of the Navy and Army ROTC. He graduated with a B.A. In 1957. Ambrose received a master's degree in history from Louisiana State University in 1958, studying under T. Harry Williams. Ambrose then went on to earn a Ph.D. from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1963, under William B. Heseltine. Career Academic positions Ambrose was a history professor from 1960 until his retirement in 1995, having spent the bulk of his time at the University of New Orleans, where he was named the Boyd Professor of History in 1989, an honor given only to faculty who attain national or international distinction for outstanding teaching, research, or other creative achievement. During the academic year 1969-70, he was Ernest J. King Professor of Maritime History at the Naval War College. In 1970, while teaching at Kansas State University, Ambrose participated in heckling of Richard Nixon during a speech the president gave on the KSU campus. Given pressure from the KSU administration and having job offers elsewhere, upon finishing out the year Ambrose offered to leave and the offer was accepted. His opposition to the Vietnam War stood in contrast to his research on presidents and the military at a time when such topics were increasingly regarded by his colleagues as old-fashioned and conservative. Ambrose also taught at Louisiana State University, Johns Hopkins University, Rutgers University, UC Berkeley, and a number of European schools, including University College Dublin, where he taught as the Mary Ball Washington Professor of American History. He founded the Eisenhower Center at the University of New Orleans in 1989, serving as its director until 1994. The mission of the Eisenhower Center is the study of the causes, conduct, and consequences of American national security policy and the use of force as an instrument of policy in the 20th century. The center's first efforts, which Ambrose initiated, involved the collection of oral histories from World War II veterans about their experiences, particularly any participation in D-Day. By the time of publication of Ambrose's D-Day, June 6, 1944, the climactic Battle of World War II, in 1994, the center had collected more than 1,200 oral histories. Ambrose donated $150,000 to the center in 1998 to foster additional efforts to collect oral histories from World War II veterans. Writings Ambrose's earliest works concerned the Civil War. He wrote biographies of the generals Emory Upton and Henry Halleck, the first of which was based on his dissertation. Early in his career, Ambrose was mentored by World War II historian Forrest Pogue. In 1964, Ambrose took a position at Johns Hopkins as the associate editor of the Eisenhower Papers, a project aimed at organizing, cataloging and publishing Eisenhower's principal papers. From this work and discussions with Eisenhower emerged an article critical of Cornelius Ryan's The Last Battle, which had depicted Eisenhower as politically no-registered trademark V, when at the end of World War II he allowed Soviet forces to take Berlin, thus shaping the Cold War that followed. Ambrose expanded this into a book, Eisenhower and Berlin, 1945, The Decision to Halt at the Elbe. Ambrose was aided in the book's writing by comments and notes provided by Eisenhower, who read a draft of the book. In 1964 Ambrose was commissioned to write the official biography of the former president and five-star General Dwight D. Eisenhower. This resulted in a book on Eisenhower's war years, The Supreme Commander, and a two-volume full biography, which are considered the standard on the subject. Regarding the first volume, Gordon Harrison, writing for the New York Times, proclaimed, "It is Mr. Ambrose's special triumph that he has been able to fight through the memoranda, the directive, plans, reports, and official self-serving pieties of the World War II establishment to uncover the idiosyncratic people at its center." Ambrose also wrote a three-volume biography of Richard Nixon. Although Ambrose was a strong critic of Nixon, the biography is considered fair and just regarding Nixon's presidency. A visit to a reunion of Easy Company veterans in 1988 prompted Ambrose to collect their stories, turning them into Band of Brothers, E Company, 506th Regiment, 101st Airborne, From Normandy to Hitler's Eagle's Nest. D-Day, built upon additional oral histories, presented the battle from the viewpoints of individual soldiers and became his first bestseller. A reviewer for the Journal of Military History commended D-Day as the most comprehensive discussion of the sea, air, and land operations that coalesced on that day. Christopher Lehman hoped, writing for the New York Times, proclaimed that reading this history, you can understand why for so many of its participants, despite all the death surrounding them, life revealed itself in that moment at that place. Ambrose's Citizen Soldiers, which describes battles fought in Northwest Europe from D-Day through the end of the war, utilized, again, extensive oral histories. Citizen Soldiers became a bestseller, appearing on the New York Times bestsellers lists for both hardcover and paperback editions in the same week. During the same week, in September 1998, D-Day and Undaunted Courage, Ambrose's 1996 book on Meriwether Lewis and the Corps of Discovery, appeared on the bestseller list, also. He also wrote The Victors, a distillation of material from other books detailing Eisenhower's wartime experiences and connections to the common soldier, and The Wild Blue, that looks at World War II aviation largely through the experiences of George Mcgovern, who commanded a B-24 crew that flew numerous missions over Germany. His other major works include Undaunted Courage about the Lewis and Clark expedition and Nothing Like It in the World about the construction of the Pacific Railroad. His final book, This Vast Land, a historical novel about the Lewis and Clark expedition written for young readers, was published posthumously in 2003. Ambrose's most popular single work was Undaunted Courage, Meriwether Lewis, Thomas Jefferson, and the Opening of the American West, which stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for a combined, hardcover and paperback, 126 weeks. Ambrose consolidated research on the Corps of Discovery's expedition conducted in the previous 30 years and synthesized it skillfully to enrich our understanding and appreciation of this grand epic, according to Alvin M. Josephy, Jr., who reviewed the book for the New York Times. Ken Burns, who produced and directed a PBS documentary on Lewis and Clark, declared that Ambrose takes one of the great, but also one of the most superficially considered, stories in American history and breathes fresh life into it. In addition to 27 self-authored books, Ambrose co-authored, edited, and contributed to many more and was a frequent contributor to magazines such as American Heritage. He, also, reviewed the works of other historians in the Journal of Southern History, Military Affairs, American Historical Review, Journal of American History, and Foreign Affairs. He served as a contributing editor to MHQ, the Quarterly Journal of Military History, also. Television, film, and other activities equals. Ambrose appeared as a historian in the 1974 ITV television series, The World at War, which detailed the history of World War II. He served as the historical consultant for the movie Saving Private Ryan. Tom Hanks, who starred in the movie, said he pored over D-Day and Band of Brothers in researching his role. Hanks also credited Ambrose's books with providing extensive detail, particularly regarding D-Day landings. The HBO miniseries, Band of Brothers, for which he was an executive producer, helped sustain the fresh interest in World War II that had been stimulated by the 50th anniversary of D-Day in 1994 and the 60th anniversary in 2004. Ambrose served as executive producer for Price for Peace, a documentary concerning the war in the Pacific Theater during World War II, and for Moments of Truth, a TV documentary containing interviews with World War II veterans. In addition, Ambrose served as a commentator for Lewis and Clark, The Journey of the Corps of Discovery, a documentary by Ken Burns. He provided commentary in 20 made-for-TV documentaries, covering diverse topics, such as World War II, Lewis and Clark, and America's prominence in the 20th century. He also appeared as a guest on numerous TV programs or stations, including The Charlie Rose Show, C-SPAN programming, CNN programming, NBC's Today Show, CNBC's Hardball, and various programming on the History Channel and the National Geographic Channel. Ambrose's association with National Geographic stemmed, in part, from his designation as an explorer in residence by the Society. In addition to his academic work and publishing, Ambrose operated a historical tour business, acting as a tour guide to European locales of World War II. Also, he served on the board of directors for American Rivers and was a member of the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial Council. National World War II Museum Ambrose's work for the Eisenhower Center, specifically his work with D-Day veterans, inspired him to found the National D-Day Museum in New Orleans. Ambrose initiated fundraising by donating $500,000. He dreamt of a museum that reflected his deep regard for our nation's citizen soldiers, the workers on the home front and the sacrifices and hardships they endured to achieve victory. He secured large contributions from the federal government, state of Louisiana, Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, and many smaller donations from former students, who answered the plea made by Ambrose in the New Orleans Times-Picayune. In 2003, Congress designated the museum as America's National World War II Museum, acknowledging an expanded scope and mission for the museum. The Stephen E. Ambrose Memorial Fund continues to support the development of the museum's Center for Study of the American Spirit, its educational programs and oral history and publication initiatives. Awards In 1998, he received the National Humanities Medal. In 2000, Ambrose received the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service, the highest honorary award the Department of Defense offers to civilians. In 2001, he was awarded the Theodore Roosevelt Medal for Distinguished Service from the Theodore Roosevelt Association. Ambrose won an Emmy as one of the producers for the mini-series Band of Brothers. Ambrose also received the George Marshall Award, the Abraham Lincoln Literary Award, the Bob Hope Award from the Congressional Medal of Honor Society, and the Will Rogers Memorial Award. Upon Ambrose's death, U.S. Senator Mary Landrieu of Louisiana offered a resolution in the Senate, which received unanimous consent, saluting the excellence of Stephen Ambrose at capturing the greatness of the American spirit in words. Personal life, final years, and death. He married his first wife, Judith de Lester, in 1957, and they had 2 children, Stephanie and Barry. Judith died in 1965, when Ambrose was 29. Ambrose married his second wife, Moira Buckley, in 1967 and adopted her 3 children, Andrew, Grace, and Hugh. Moira was an active assistant in his writing and academic projects. After retiring, he maintained homes in Helena, Montana, and Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. A longtime smoker, he was diagnosed with lung cancer in April 2002. His health deteriorated rapidly, and 7 months after the diagnosis he died, at the age of 66. George McGovern, The primary focus of Ambrose's Wild Blue set, he probably reached more readers than any other historian in our national history. Legacy: Ambrose donated $500,000, half the amount needed, to the University of Wisconsin, to endow a chair in the name of William B. Heseltine, Ambrose's mentor. The chair's position would focus on the teaching of American military history. When the chairs became fully endowed, after Ambrose's death, it was renamed the Ambrose Heseltine Chair. The Ambrose Professor of History title was established at the University of New Orleans after his death. The position is reserved for a military historian. Each year the Rutgers University Living History Society awards the Stephen E. Ambrose Oral History Award to an author or artist who has made significant use of oral history. Past winners include Tom Brokaw, Steven Spielberg, Studs Terkel, Michael Beschloss, and Ken Burns. Criticism: plagiarism. In 2002, Ambrose was accused of plagiarizing several passages in his book The Wild Blue. Fred Barnes reported in the Weekly Standard that Ambrose had taken passages from Wings of Morning, the story of the last American bomber shot down over Germany in World War II, by Thomas Childers, a history professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Ambrose had footnoted sources, but had not enclosed in quotation marks, numerous passages from Childers' book. Ambrose asserted that only a few sentences in all his numerous books were the work of other authors. He offered this defense: "I tell stories. I don't discuss my documents. I discuss the story. It almost gets to the point where, how much is the reader going to take? I'm not writing a PhD dissertation. I wish I had put the quotation marks in, but I didn't. I am not out there stealing other people's writings. If I am writing up a passage and it is a story I want to tell and this story fits and a part of it is from other people's writing, I just type it up that way and put it in a footnote. I just want to know where the hell it came from." A Forbes investigation of his work found cases of plagiarism involving passages in at least 6 books, with a similar pattern going all the way back to his doctoral dissertation. The History News Network lists 7 of Ambrose's more than 40 works: The Wild Blue, Undaunted Courage, Nothing Like It in the World, Nixon, Ruin and Recovery, Citizen Soldiers, The Supreme Commander, and Crazy Horse and Custer. Contain content from 12 authors without appropriate attribution from Ambrose. Factual errors and disputed characterizations. Pacific Railroad, a front-page article published in the Sacramento Bee on January 1, 2001, entitled "Area Historians Rail Against Inaccuracies in Book," listed more than 60 instances identified as significant errors, misstatements, and made-up quotes in Nothing Like It in the World, The Men Who Built the Transcontinental Railroad, 1863–1869, Ambrose's non-academic popular history about the construction of the Pacific Railroad between Council Bluffs, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska and the San Francisco Bay at Alameda, Oakland via Sacramento, California, which was published in August, 2000. The discrepancies were documented in a detailed fact-checking paper compiled in December, 2000 by 3 Western U.S. railroad historians who were also experienced researchers, consultants, and collectors specializing in the Pacific Railroad and related topics. On January 11, 2001, Washington Post columnist Lloyd Grove reported in his column The Reliable Source, that a co-worker had found a serious historical error in the same book that Chase and Ambrose promised to correct in future editions. A number of journal reviews also sharply criticized the research and fact-checking in the book. Reviewer Walter Nugent observed that it contained annoying slips such as mislabeled maps, inaccurate dates, geographical errors, and misidentified word origins, while Don L. Hofsommer agreed that the book confuses facts, and that the research might best be characterized as once over lightly. The Eisenhower controversy. In the introduction to Ambrose's biography of Eisenhower, he claims that the former president approached him after having read his previous biography of Henry Halleck, but Tim Reeves, deputy director of the Eisenhower Presidential Center, says it was Ambrose who contacted Eisenhower and suggested the project, as shown by a letter from Ambrose found in the Dwight D. Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum. In his response, Eisenhower stated that the confidence I have derived from your work by reading your two books especially the one on Halleck give reasons why I should be ready to help out so far as I can. The Halleck biography still sits on a shelf at the Eisenhower National Historic Site in Gettysburg. After Eisenhower's death in 1969, Ambrose made repeated claims to have had a unique and extraordinarily close relationship with him over the final 5 years of the former president's life. In an extensive 1998 interview, before a group of high school students, Ambrose stated that he spent a lot of time with Ike, really a lot, hundreds and hundreds of hours. Ambrose claimed he interviewed Eisenhower on a wide range of subjects, and that he had been with him on a daily basis for a couple years before his death doing interviews and talking about his life. The former president's diary and telephone records show that the pair met only 3 times, for a total of less than 5 hours. Reeves has stated that interview dates Ambrose cites in his 1970 book, The Supreme Commander, cannot be reconciled with Eisenhower's personal schedule, but Reeves discovered, upon further investigation, a hidden relationship between the two men. Eisenhower enlisted Ambrose in his efforts to preserve his legacy and counteract criticisms of his presidency, particularly those charging that Eisenhower's actions at the end of World War II produced the Cold War. Ambrose wrote a review and book supporting the former general, with Eisenhower providing direction and comments during the process. Reeves could not square the questionable interview dates cited by Ambrose in later works, but uncovered a relationship with Eisenhower that was too complicated to be described by Ambrose critics. Unsubstantiated criticism of British servicemen. In his book D-Day June 6, 1944, The Climatic Battle of World War II, Ambrose penned several unsubstantiated comments demeaning the performance of British sailors of combined operations, Royal Navy. Especially galling and completely erroneous are his statements on pages 337 and 343. On page 337 Ambrose wrote, on the command boat for B Company, the CO, Captain Edward Zappacosta, heard the British coxswain cry out, "We can't go in there. We can't see the landmarks. We must pull off." Zappacosta pulled his Colt .45 and ordered, "By God, you'll take this boat straight in," the coxswain did. When the ramp dropped, Zappacosta was first off. He was immediately hit. Medic Thomas Kenser saw him bleeding from the hip and shoulder. Kenser, still on the ramp, shouted, "Try to make it in. I'm coming." But the captain was already dead. Before Kenser could jump off the boat he was shot dead. Every man on the boat save one was either killed or wounded before reaching the beach. In 1999, Bob Sales, the only survivor on D-Day from this landing craft, stated that the captain did not pull his gun on the British coxswain. Sales said, "I want to tell the story of what happened going in at Normandy concerning Captain Edward V. Zappacosta. I was his radio operator. I know what I am telling you to be absolute facts. I am the only survivor off that landing craft and I have never told anybody that Captain Zappacosta pulled his gun on that coxswain and told him to take that boat in. It did not happen. When we left the Empire Javelin and boarded the landing craft, Captain Zappacosta was the first man at the front. I was behind him, being his radio operator. He was very quiet going in. He was not a talkative man anyways, but he was very, very quiet on the trip in. About 1,000 yards or so off the beach, the only words he spoke were, "OE Sales, step up there and see what's going on the beach, if you can see anything." I looked over. I could not tell anything. I said, "OEA Company. I can't see 'em. It looks like bodies laying on the beach, but I cannot tell." And I sat back down. It wasn't but a brief while after that and the only words from the coxswain were, "OE I cannot go in any further. I'm going to drop the ramp." There was no argument about it. There were obstacles in the water. The water was up to my neck when I finally got my feet on the ground. He could not do any better. We were headed into Viaville, where it was the most heavily fortified area on Omaha. Then the ramp went down and these were the only words I heard the coxswain speak, and I do not know to this day whether he got out alive or not, But when that ramp went down, mortar shells were hitting on both sides of us. Machine guns were all over top of us, just like you were in a bee's nest. The captain was the first man to get off the boat and he was hit on the ramp and fell into the water. Sergeant Wright was next off, followed by the first aid man. I was fourth off the boat. The sea was rough, the ramp banged up and down, and I caught my heel and went over the side into the water. When I got up, Captain Zappacosta was up and calling to me, "I'm hit." He went down and I did not see him come up. His body was washed up on the beach later. The first time I saw the Zappacosta incident about pulling his gun was back in the early 60s in a magazine called Stag. I think some writer just dreamed it up. According to your papers, SLA Marshall said it, but I just don't see how Marshall could have said it. I did not tell him. I was the only survivor off that landing craft. There is no way it happened. I did not tell it. There was nobody else living who could have told it, and it could not have happened, and if there is one thing I want, it is for that British sailor, if he is alive or dead or whatever, I want him cleared of this. It did not happen. In a more recent statement of February 4, 2002, Bob Sales stated, "I told Stephen Ambrose it was absolutely wrong. He just laughed it off and said, I can't do everything I met him up there in Washington just a couple of years ago at a press conference. He just laughed it off." Captain Zappacosta never moved out of his position all the way in. He was not the kind of man to pull a gun to the head of a sailor. If we had gone in any further, we would have hit the mines on the obstacle. I want this thing cleared up. Works. Sole author Halleck, Lincoln's Chief of Staff, Baton Rouge, Louisiana State University Press, Upton and the Army, Louisiana State University Press, Duty, Honor, Country, A History of West Point, Baltimore, Johns Hopkins University Press, Eisenhower and Berlin, 1945, The Decision to Halt at the Elbe. New York W. W. Norton. 1967. OCLC 203,781. The Supreme Commander, The War Years of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, New York, Doubleday, Crazy Horse and Custer, The Parallel Lives of Two American Warriors, New York, Doubleday ISBN 0-385-09666-6, Ike Spies, Eisenhower and the Espionage Establishment, New York, Doubleday ISBN 0-385-14493-8, Eisenhower Volume 1, Soldier, General of the Army, President-elect, 1890-1952, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-44069-1, Eisenhower Volume 2, The President, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-49901-7, Pegasus Bridge, June 6, 1944, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-52374-0, Nixon, The Education of a Politician, 1913-1962, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-52836-X, Eisenhower, Soldier and President. New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-70107-X, Nixon, The Triumph of a Politician, 1962-1972, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-52837-8, Nixon, Ruin and Recovery, 1973-1990, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-69188-0, Band of Brothers, E Company, 506th Regiment, 101st Airborne, from Normandy to Hitler's Eagle's Nest ISBN 0-671-76922-7, D-Day, June 6, 1944, The Climactic Battle of World War II, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-671-88403-4, Undaunted Courage, Meriwether Lewis, Thomas Jefferson, and the Opening of the American West, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-684-81107-3, Citizen Soldiers, the U.S. Army from the Normandy Beaches. To the Bulge to the Surrender of Germany, June 7, 1944, May 7, 1945, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-684-81525-7, Americans at War, Jackson, University Press of Mississippi ISBN 1-57806-026-5, The Victors, Eisenhower and His Boys, The Men of World War II, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-684-85628-X, Comrades, Brothers, Fathers, Heroes. Sons, Pals, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-684-86718-4, Nothing Like It in the World, The Men Who Built the Transcontinental Railroad, 1863-1869, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-684-84609-8, The Wild Blue, The Men and Boys Who Flew the B-24s Over Germany, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-7432-0339-9, To America, Personal Reflections of an Historian, New York, Simon & Schuster ISBN 0-7432-0275-9, This Vast Land, New York, Simon & Schuster, ISBN 0-600-898-86448-5. With others with Richard H. Immerman, Milton S. Eisenhower, Educational Statesman, Baltimore, Maryland, Johns Hopkins University Press ISBN 0-8018-2988-7, with Douglas Brinkley, Rise to Globalism, American Foreign Policy Since 1938, New York, Penguin Books ISBN 0-14-026831-6, with Sam Abel, Lewis and Clark, Voyage of Discovery, Washington, D.C., National Geographic Society, ISBN 0-7922-7084-3, with Douglas Brinkley, Witness to America ISBN 978-0-06-271611-8. 2010, ISBN 0-06-199028-0, with Douglas Brinkley, The Mississippi and the Making of a Nation, From the Louisiana Purchase to Today, ISBN 0-7922-6913-6. Edited works Institutions in Modern America, Innovation in Structure and Process, Baltimore, Maryland, Johns Hopkins University Press, with James A. Barber, The Military and American Society, Essays and Readings, New York, New York, The Free Press ISBN 0-375-50910-0, with Gunter Biscoff, Eisenhower and the German POWs, Facts Against Falsehood, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Louisiana State University Press ISBN 0-8071-1758-7, with Gunter Biscoff, Eisenhower A Centenary Assessment, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Louisiana State University Press ISBN 0-8071-1942-3, American Heritage New History of World War II, original text by C. L. Salzberger, New York, New York, Viking Press ISBN 0-670-87474-4. References. External links, The Real War, Stephen Ambrose's GIs Are Plaster Saints Engaged in a Sanctified Crusade, PBS Biography of Ambrose, Stephen Ambrose at the Internet Movie Database, WorldCat Search of Works by Stephen Ambrose, Stephen E. Ambrose at fantasticfiction.co.uk, Interview with Stephen Ambrose, Obituary in the Independent, Obituary at website of the American Historical Association, Eisenhower and My Father, Stephen Ambrose by Hugh Ambrose, commentary dated December 19, 2000 contributed by G.J. Chris Graves, Edson T. Strabridge, and Charles N. Sweet regarding Stephen E. Ambrose's book Nothing Like It in the World, The Men Who Built the Transcontinental Railroad 1863–1869. Appearances on C-SPAN, Booknotes interview with Ambrose on D-Day, June 6, 1944, June 5, 1994. In-depth interview with Ambrose, November 5, 2000.